anyway, so tonight I wanted to actually shift gears a little bit. Last time I was with you, last Wednesday, if you saw that, I was calling everybody stupid, and it was tactless. I admit it. Of course, I intended to be tactless to try to draw a point there, but tonight we shift gears, and hopefully we'll bring it all back. Now, I actually wanted to tonight talk about one of those very famous texts from the Bible in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, often called the love chapter, and it ends with now there remain these three things: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And this particular chapter is a particularly thoughtful part where Paul seems to be really bringing things together in terms of how he understands how this is all adding up, and he begins to recognize in abstract terms what's really important, and what it is he's learned as to what is important, both through the sort of faith that he has had and the experience he's had working with people. And by the way, one of the things that I think is interesting about this chapter, and I remember actually years ago, it was probably in the late 70s that I was actually preaching from this particular text, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And I tried to make the point when I got started on it that this is not a chapter that tells us how to love. It isn't. Love is not the imitation of the behaviors we see in that chapter. Love is not an attempt to conform our behavior to these sorts of things. Rather, people who do what they do out of duty are oftentimes trying to clear their own conscience. They're not really, for example, it's a good thing that when fathers provide for their children to the best they can, when mothers provide for their children, it's good when parents do things like that. But if you have parents who are providing for their children because, that's our responsibility, you got to wonder, what do you think of your children? Isn't there something about the fact that you've brought them into this world and that you've gotten to know them and they're so precious to you that just doing that which helps meet their needs is just something you'd really find joy in doing? It wouldn't have to be your duty or your responsibility. It would be your joy. It would be just it's your opportunity. It would be something that you could see great value in doing. If you, for example, if you're going to give to the poor and help feed people who are hungry, because this is a good thing to do. I got to be honest with you. What I do have a question. What do you think of these people you're feeding? Do you care that they're hungry? Isn't that just a good enough reason to help them get food? Now, I certainly don't think we want to indulge people in a manner that keeps them from taking care of themselves in ways they can, and so I'm not suggesting we do that. But at the same time, it would be extremely meaningful of us to find that when people are starving and in need of food and really don't have access to it, to play a role in caring about how this is going for them. So I understand 1 Corinthians 13 really not to be a chapter that's telling us how to love, but rather how to recognize that love exists by the way it tends to naturally work itself out, the way it tends to manifest itself. This is something that begins deep within and goes through a great deal of processing and value systems and cognitive dynamics before it ever becomes actual behavior. And this is just the obvious end of a long chain of things that have something to do with people who truly love. Um, and so in the chapter. But I wanted to take a look at this last verse here in particular, in light of a few things. One of the things you've heard me argue about is that uh, religion and Christianity is turned into something that is just full of hyperbole and manipulation and exaggeration, and the text of the Bible is often interpreted and translated in a manner where it's really turned into a book of maximum manipulative leverage, and that's sad when it's sick. But the truth is, I don't really see all parts of this text as possessing that as its original purpose. I think that's just the purpose we found it useful, as it were, if you want to call it useful, to put the text to, in light of the fact that, well, we've got this text now, so here's a good idea. Let's do this with it. Now remain these three things: faith. But, you got to ask yourself a question. What is faith? Faith isn't necessarily what we might want to think that it is. In fact, not necessarily for theists or for atheists. Many times, theists want to believe that faith is the way in which we apprehend the truth of God so that we can now know things that people who don't know God or have faith in God cannot know. And that this is somehow for us a route to knowledge. I want to disagree. This word that is translated faith in the New Testament is a word that was around, being used in Koine Greek, long before it had anything to do with anything religious. And consequently, this word had common meaning. It was a word that people used. They used it in a wide variety of contexts. And in fact, even earlier, listening to Chris on his show, Meeting of the Minds, and he had on there a guest today, and Aaron Ra, and they were talking about, they're making a distinction between, well, kind of like, religious faith and the concept of trust. And here I would say that I think that a lot of theists have abused this, because there is no such thing as a special religious meaning for any of the biblical words. These words existed in that language long before they were ever applied to anything Christian. And Christians used these words in the early days before they even developed a determinate language as ways of just expressing ideas of what they were dealing with. And as a result, these words weren't rich with theology. They weren't rich with hyperbole. They weren't rich with implications of specific doctrinal or theological paradigms. These were people simply trying to express what they see going on with the dynamics they were struggling with. And this is true of the word faith. Now, notice, for example, faith is thought of as a noun, and we generally use it to mean to have trust or confidence or in someone or something. Like I could say, I have faith in you. And when we get in our cars to go to work in the morning, we get in our cars, head out to work. There's a sense in which we could say having faith that work is where we're going to arrive at, now, it's true. Things can happen. You could end up in an accident. You could run out of gas, or or there could end up being an accident, and traffic is blocked. A meteor might hit your place of work. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. But you generally head out in the morning to work believing that you're going to end up at work, that you're going to arrive there. Now, you don't know that that's going to happen. You have good reason to believe it. But there's a sense in which um, Christians try to turn faith into a substitute for knowledge. It isn't. It isn't a substitute for knowledge. Many times, because of the crazy way that Christians deal with faith, causes atheists, in my opinion, to sometimes react and go to the complete other end and treat faith as if it's an inept form of knowledge. Knowledge and faith are not the same thing. And if people are going to use faith as if it's a great substitute for knowledge, they've missed the whole point. If people are going to treat faith as an inept form of knowledge and treat faith as if it's something we shouldn't have, I think that they're overreacting and trying to be reactionary to the abuses that they see, and that doesn't work. You really need to kind of deal with these things for what they are, without regard to how other people may be abusing them. But faith is really just it is a belief that something is likely to be so, or likely to come about, even though you don't really know. And there's a sense in which we as human beings, we cannot fully function and move forward with the motivations that we do without there being a certain amount of unverifiable justification for assuming that the things that we are headed out to do can be accomplished. There are plenty of things that we should be trying to accomplish that we have no idea if those things can actually be done. We should give them a good shot. And many of them involve really trying to do them, believing that you might actually really be able to do it. So faith is a dynamic of approaching the unknown in a manner that enables, in a sense, our motivation towards it, and towards ends that are meaningful and useful. And indeed, many times that faith ends up being rewarded with accomplishments actually occurring. And sometimes that faith, although it doesn't achieve its goal, it achieves so many other things that we weren't chasing after that end up being worthwhile. So although not all things that we might put our faith in are worthy of that faith, I see faith as a standard concept of trust. And I don't believe that the word faith ought to ever be used in a theological manner that gives it a meaning that is in any manner wonderfully strange or unique to the concept of belief in God. Even the belief in God is no different cognitively than the belief that one might have that their spouse loves them. The belief that when they get, the belief that that life is doable. The belief that that if I meet certain challenges tomorrow on the job, I'm going to find myself prepared well enough to do a decent enough job that I'm not going to think that my career is over tomorrow just because I'm going to suddenly discover, oh my goodness, there's requirements here and I can't even meet them because I'm just an incompetent person. Faith in oneself, faith in other people. So this word faith is sometimes, I believe, used by Christians to mean something it really doesn't mean. There is faith, though, and we do have, as theists, a belief, a suspicion, and a trust that somehow the meaning of all of this is wrapped up in the existence of a one. And even as a theist such as myself, even without a real need to define what it means for that one to be the one, or what it means for God to be God, or who God is, or anything, these in some ways are irrelevant. They don't have anything to do with the real question. It's kind of like, although I have faith in my wife, that I think she's a great nanny. She's really great with kids. I have faith that she will be a good partner to me, that we are together, we're in this together, we're really committed to each other. Um, I have that faith in her, um, and it's a very meaningful thing for me to have. And having that faith is a big part of what makes each day and each challenge that can come up such a worthwhile thing to be heading into. And that faith is oftentimes that which is uh, guiding me in terms of how to deal with some of the issues that come up, because issues do come up, but when these issues come up, I don't stop to say, well, wait a minute, maybe she doesn't really love me, or maybe I now see her true colors. That kind of stuff is absurd and ridiculous. So, but there's room for faith, and it involves itself in the relationship in a very real way, in ways that knowledge can't. Knowledge and faith are two different things. Faith doesn't trump knowledge, and faith is not an inept form of knowledge. They are two different cognitive dynamics. In fact, some people say, they'll condemn faith or belief because it's that inept form of knowledge, and sometimes I'd say to them things like this: well, do you believe, say, in certain scientific assertions? And I would say, when they say yes, I would say, well, I don't believe in them. Uh, I know them to be true. Now, see, because that word belief gets used sometimes in a polite way. Sometimes we say, oh, as far as I'm concerned, evolution is a fact. Do I believe in evolution? No. I know that evolution is a fact. I don't believe in it. I know it. I've seen the evidence of what is going on. To me, it is just inconceivable that there's any other way of explaining these changes and differences that we see have actually occurred. So there's a sense here in which if something is really true and you can verify it and validate it, you shouldn't believe it. You should know it, And there's a sense in which belief and knowledge are two different things. And although we do, if you're sitting at the table and you're eating, you don't turn to the person across the table from you and say, give me the salt. I want the salt. Give me the salt. We say, would you please pass the salt? Now, we say this as if, this is an option for you. But the truth is, we want the salt. The truth is, we intend to get the salt. We're not gonna be satisfied with our request until such time as we get the salt. But in order to be polite, we couch it in terms where we say, would you please pass the salt? And so also, in order to not appear so arrogant, we oftentimes say, well, I believe, and this helps us to kind of put it into a more gentle context where we don't want to really come across as, nor are we really feeling arrogant about the things we are very certain about as known. So we do use that word belief in that way, but when it comes down to it, that's veiled speech. It's kind of talking around the corner. It's not really the meaning of faith in terms of what faith actually is. Viewer comment: it sounds like you're saying that there is no belief within knowledge. I believe evolution is true, don't I? You see, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to demonstrate the semantical difference. And yes, we use these words in a way that kind of drifts across the domains, but we do so in order to be congenial, in order to be polite. So as a result, when we are persuaded that a certain conclusion is verified and valid, and we are in a place where we know it and rest in it, believe it to be verified and validated, we can sometimes use that word believe as a way of trying to be gentle. Not only that, but we oftentimes discover that things that appear to be valid and verified may remain valid and verified, but they also might become mitigated and modified by other things that later come to light as verified and validated. And so this word belief can be used in a sense to kind of buffer gently what would otherwise appear to be. We don't need to turn science into dogma. It doesn't need that. If 2 plus 2 is 4, we can just gently believe that. We can just gently know that. We don't need to champion the concept. It's just so, and we can talk about it as I believe that 2 plus 2 is 4. That sounds a little odd to say about that. But so it is an interesting aspect of speech. I am saying, actually, the point is this, that when theists take this word faith and turn it into something that is a gift from God, that is a belief of something that is produced by special revelation, that they are saying something that is pushing it a bit. Now, I am not opposed to the notion that the presence of God is something some people can be conscious of. But I do believe that a consciousness, an awareness of the presence of God is quite possibly a deception. It is quite possibly, it is an experience that has some other explanation. That's why we call it belief in God, because we honestly do not know that presence we experience and feel is indeed God. We don't know that it is. We don't know that it isn't, but we're going to move forward from this point trusting that it is. Or we're going to move forward trusting that it isn't. And in such case, we're either a theist or an atheist. And I personally find both conclusions to be fully reasonable. I have no desire to convert atheists. They can remain atheists. It's not. I don't even think it's gonna harm them in the least. In fact, I don't think they should change their mind without having that be something they are comfortably coherent with. Just the way it is. And I don't think I have to change my mind from being a theist until that would be something that I would find coherent and comfortable. And you know what? If that were ever happened, then it could happen. I don't care. That's not the point. The truth is, the kind of God that I believe in is one who isn't so caught up in his own ego that he requires people to actually draw a conclusion that can't be validated or verified. That's crazy. That's abusive. But anyway, so we have this concept of faith that I think that theists have taken to mean something it really can't, that where it becomes a substitute for knowledge. But what about this concept of hope? I just take a little bit of time talking about hope now. What is hope? I really get the impression that the word that we have translated, hope, is not a word that means the same thing as the English word hope, but the English word hope is perhaps a good one to use. I don't know that we have, when you go from one language to another and one culture to another, you don't always find just the perfect word to express something. But this concept of hope was not, in a sense, the same word that we would use like, if let's say we're holed up in the house in the woods, and there's these bad guys outside, and they're shooting at us, and they're like 100 feet away from the house, and they're shooting, and we're in here, and we used our cell phone, and we tried to call 911, and we got through to someone, and then the cell phone died, and then we go, well, I hope they were able to determine where we were, so that they can send help. That hope there is not hope in the same sense as the biblical word, from which the the LP, that is translated hope. That's not what it means. Really, this word is more closely related to the concept of anticipation. Kind of like if you see, if you're out watching kids play baseball in a makeshift field, and the guy, one of them, throws the ball. You can tell I'm not a sports person. Don't have that cheat. So one of them, he pitches the ball, and the other guy, takes a crack at it, hits it with the bat, and you see that ball go flying, and you're looking at the trajectory of the ball, and you realize now, because you have enough understanding of trajectory, you go, that ball's going to hit that window. And you stand there waiting, and you're watching, and you see it, and finally it smacks against the window, and the window crashes. There's something about this moment between, when you first notice the trajectory of the ball, between that moment and when it actually hits the window. You're in this state of anticipation that it is going to happen. That experience of anticipation is really what the meaning of this word hope has. That has more to do with its flavor. It's not hope in the sense of, well, this is the only way it's going to work out. Rather, it is a sense of perceiving the trajectory of the energy that is involved, and a sense of where this is all headed and where it's going to end up. And realizing that until that happens, we really don't know that that's what's going to happen. But I fully anticipate that that's what's going to happen. That's what this word hope means. Now, there's a sense in which this hope doesn't provide us with a sense of certainty. It doesn't. Surprises can happen. In fact, I'll tell you what, sometimes you can watch something in great anticipation. You see that baseball after being cracked by the bat headed towards the window, and you think, oh no, here it comes. And then this bird happens to be flying by, and the ball hits the bird, which deflects it, and it doesn't hit the window. And oh my goodness. I remember one of the first times I had one of those moments. I was a young teenager, had a driver's permit, didn't even have my license, but I was out with my friends, and some of them had a license that allowed me to drive with the permit, and some of them liked to drink, and I didn't like to, so I was the designated driver. We were out one night, and it was in a winter night, and we're going across this parking lot when we see this Volkswagen bus moving toward us in the parking lot at a radical speed, and the parking lot is very icy. And I realize I can't stop, because if I slam on the brakes, I'm just going to continue sliding, because I'm moving along very carefully on this parking lot to get through to the other side of it where I can get to the plowed road. And so I also realized I'm not going to be able to speed up either, because I'm just, I don't have any traction. I'm just kind of creeping along, and the trajectory to me looked like this guy's going to hit us. And so what I did is I did veer off to the side, and I went into a snowbank, and sure enough, this Volkswagen bus hits us. And I'm thinking, oh no, we don't need this. We get out of the car, after being jostled quite a bit, after being struck by this. And this guy he even apologized that I'm just showing off to my girlfriend and showing her how I can spin the thing around on the ice. And, but anyway, we get out, and there's no damage to the car, none. And yet we were jostled quite a bit. And there's no damage to his vehicle either. We're kind of like, what's going on here? Now, we anticipated that there was going to be a fender bender going on here, and a pretty good one. And the way we were jostled, it was going to be a really good. We discovered, as we're looking at it, there's this big black mark on his front bumper, on one of the corners. And what happened is that because I veered into the snowbank, it took the tire of the particular vehicle I was on and made it stick out so that he actually bounced off the tire as it was sticking out from the way I turned into the snowbank. And the tire was rubbery enough, I guess, or bouncy enough. He bounced off, and there was no structural damage done. And it hit the tire in such a manner as it didn't even, bend the axle or the rim or anything, and just no damage. And it was like weird. So we anticipated it, but it didn't turn out that way. So just because we anticipate something, we have discovered in life that not everything happens the way we would anticipate it would. But there's this sense that the biblical word for hope here, that is we find in the New Testament, does have more of that sense of the anticipation. And indeed, this is part of where our faith is. We anticipate that the culmination of life and things like that is headed in a particular direction. We don't know, but it is what we anticipate. And in a sense, when you anticipate something, you emotionally, you psychologically, and you, in various other ways, prepare for it. And so we have faith and we have hope. But faith can be misplaced. Hope can be based upon and an anticipation of information not properly understood. And it can also be based on things where we're not sure, we're not aware of all the things that could actually happen to alter what it appears would otherwise happen. So faith and hope really do have certain limits to them. But this is where we come to the saying, and one of the reasons why Paul finishes the saying, but the greatest of these is love. Faith, hope, and then love. Now, love is also a word that I think that Christians misuse. First of all, we talk about agape being the Greek word. A lot of Christians have been teaching each other that agape is a word which is a word used and reserved for the love that only God can have. I got news for you. The word agape was around and being used long before it was ever applied to God. And in fact, the word has gone through an interesting history that involves a variety of things. In some ways, in Greek, the word agape was actually used to talk about the kind of a commitment a person would have to a promise they made, where even if keeping that promise was something they would regret, if they felt that their word was important, they would be true to their word and they would maintain the commitment because that was something that they valued. And this could sometimes be called agape. In fact, even in the Bible, we find the word agape being used in ways that could possibly be a reference to the love of God. I believe there's a place where Jesus talks about how people love darkness more than the light, and they won't come to the light lest they see how their deeds are evil, because they love the darkness. And the word there is agape, and so this is a word that has more a sense of commitment. When you've sealed yourself off in a fixed and limiting way, this is also the meaning of that word agape. It is part of where that comes from. But it was used in the New Testament because the word agape was most closely resembling the word from the Hebrew, chesed, which really was used to talk about the unfailing kindness and commitment that was understood by them to belong to God. And this had to do with the faith and the hope that somehow God would make all things right, that God was committed to the process, that even if we don't understand what's going on, there is a commitment here that will never, ever, ever die. And so this word love actually has more to do with the concept of a value that is final. To believe that human beings are actually valuable, and that they are valuable in a manner where their behavior, though their behavior might not be valuable, Invaluable behavior does not cause the person to become invaluable as a person. And that doesn't mean that their behavior doesn't require certain responses that are proper, natural, and logical consequences to the behavior. But it means that nothing ends the commitment to the value they have as a being, as an existence. And so this word love could be used in that sort of a way. And people did attribute that to being the way of understanding uh, the love of God as they did. But this is not what the word itself always means. And so I think it's important that we try to recognize that just because we find this word agape, that it's not always referring to this concept that is the love of God. But the thing that I also find most troublesome about this is the people who believe that we can only love this way when God is in us, loving. I want you to know something. I really want to be a loving person. I really do. I don't think I'm always succeeding at that. But I have endeavored to try to understand that as being a person who is aware of and confronted with the reality that you are a valuable existence, and I want to behave in a manner that sustains that value, that celebrates that value, that seeks to make that value seen and perceived and celebrated, and also that doesn't want that value violated, wants that value to somehow become the dominant force in your life so that you live in a manner that is in accordance with being a valuable existence. I want to be uh, that kind of a person, a person of love. And I don't think I always succeed at that, but that's the goal. That's the mark that I'm headed towards, and that I often am missing. But I'm getting better and better at it. I've discovered as life goes on, as I really allow myself to be honest about the ways in which that actually works, and in the ways in which it really actually doesn't. But I'll tell you what. The last thing in the world I ever want to do is love you, but I can't. So it's really the Spirit of God in me loving you for me. I don't want you to love me that way either. And I'll tell you what, if the love that we have for each other isn't your loving me, I don't need your love and you don't need mine. There is nothing magical. There is nothing uber spiritual. There's nothing gifted in this. Now, not to say that it isn't an awesome thing. And the truth is, I understand the dynamics psychologically of love as being something that human beings don't self-generate. And I think this is one of the reasons why we struggle with it so much. I do believe that love is something that we exist in such a manner, whether or not you want to believe that that is through evolution or through the creation of God. I don't really care. It doesn't make any difference to this particular statement I'm trying to make. We are in such a condition that it is not until we have experienced what it is for someone else to value our existence and to find it unconditionally valuable. It isn't until we have that arresting experience that we even discover what it is to then extend that to others. There's something about love that it has to be experienced first before we can. Once we've experienced it, however, we can begin to take that seed and move in wonderful ways forward with it. But it seems to me that each of us need to, somewhere between the day we were born and the day we become adults, we need to know, we need to learn that somehow, someone, somewhere has regarded us as genuinely valuable and precious. And psychologically, we discover that children who don't experience some level of authentic affection and value in who they are, these kids die. Uh, a baby that is not touched and hugged and loved will die. There's something about that being valued as an existence that nurtures us with the ability to move forward. I don't know what it is. I don't understand it, and we certainly pick up on it long before we can even articulate it. So that sort of love is something that I even see as being the very essence of what it is we're talking about when we're dealing with the person of God. And in fact, I do see human beings as being so adequate to life that the kickstart to love is all we really need, and all we really need to be able to move forward. Anyhow, I don't want uh, to belabor this too much, but think about it. Faith can be misplaced. Hope can be misanticipated. But love, I don't think you can ever go wrong with that. Now, there are certainly some bad definitions of love, and you can go wrong with that. Love is not affection. Love isn't sex. Love isn't wanting to be with someone. Love is valuing the existence. Vital love is the valuing of the existence of someone else, and recognizing that the value that we have as existences, each of us, myself, my neighbor, is something that is inarticulately incalculable. Viewer comment: thanks, Bob, for giving us a new, more sensible way to embrace belief in God. Oh, well, you're welcome. Uh, yeah, in fact, when it comes down to it, I what I'm looking forward is a day when we can bring theism to the point where everything about it is simply psychologically healthy, and that there's nothing about it that is so dogmatic that it involves somehow looking into this other dimension and telling people in this dimension what's really so about this. Yeah, that's a ridiculous and absurd and meaningless argument. It's a waste of time. It's not even necessary. And in fact, I perceive Jesus as someone who came along. In many ways, there's some words that he has said that are recorded for us in the New Testament where people take it too seriously, where I think Jesus was actually speaking sarcastically and mockingly. I get the impression that Jesus was misrepresented sometimes, but that he was really trying to derail the nonsense of absurd religion, of absurd recognition that it misses the point. Even that story, which probably, who knows if it ever happened, but it certainly wasn't really original to John, where they bring to Jesus the woman caught in the act of adultery, and Jesus is writing in the sand and says, "Well, he who's without sin cast the first stone." When they say, Moses commanded us that this woman is to be stoned. Jesus in this is presented as somebody who's saying, do you realize these rules don't work for you? And something else about that particular passage that I think is rather interesting is, oh, so this woman was caught in the very act. Well, where's the guy? How come he's not here? What's going on here with that? But anyhow, I do see Jesus as originally being somebody who really is attempting to derail all of this nonsense, where theism is an option. It's something that one can find faith and hope, and in a manner that enables them to move forward with that and in anticipation, and that's perfectly fine. But I'll tell you what, the most important thing here is love, and I do believe that when a person experiences genuine and authentic love, truly being regarded by someone else at some point in time in a very significant way that affects your even sense of identity, where you have been regarded as a precious existence, and you experience that, I believe that is an experience that is absolutely vital for everybody, whether you're a theist or an atheist. And I believe that if that is an experience that you have, that will make all the difference in the world. You might have faith in Jesus. You might have faith in God. You might not. You might have hope that this is all going to culminate somehow in a theistic theme. Well, that's wonderful, I suppose. But I'll tell you what, it's still useless without love. And if you have love, you don't even really need those other things as much as you would need love. They're just conclusions and perceptions and paradigms. That's all they are. But love is not just a perception and a paradigm. It is vital to our existence. It's so much more important. So these three things do remain in terms of those of us who are theists. We got faith and we have hope. But I'll tell you what, that's not what it's all about. That's not what's really important here. So you have faith. So you believe in Jesus, and so you're spending all your time trying to convince other people to necessarily believe in. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. People need love more than they need Jesus. People need love more than they need to be anticipating the way this history of mankind is going to culminate. They need love more than anything else. It is what it's all about. This is where life is really lived. This is where relationships really happen. This is how we get to communicate with each other. And you know what? Where there is love, there doesn't even have to be agreement. I mean, I'll tell you what. I started out by talking to you about how much I find Greg to be a wonderful person. He is a precious person. I love Greg. I think he loves me. I think we have a real respect for each other. We regard each other's existence as meaningful and useful. And with that, we can move forward. And he doesn't have to be a believer, and I don't have to be an atheist. We can move forward with that. And I'll tell you what, that would please me more than anything, that we do that. And I would encourage us all to do that. Take a little bit of that hyperbole out of the faith. Doesn't mean we have to stop believing. But anyhow, there's where we got it. And I wanted to talk about faith, hope, and love tonight. Thank you for listening. My name is Bob Greaves, the Unconventional Pastor. And we'll catch you later. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned in just a moment right here on the Florida NCG studio stage. Dr. Michael W. Jones and Rhonda will be up on the stage talking about very, very interesting topics at the place. Don't miss it.